took our money and turned it into weapons and bunkers and ammo. And now we're destroying those weapons, and you're writing, Mr. President, that grievous wrong.
At exactly 0600 hours on March 27, 2026, a signal flashed across every screen in CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. 4 words, unambiguous. Final, Tripoli is on station. 30 days after the first FA-18F Super Hornet launched from the USS Abraham Lincoln's catapult at H-hour on February 28th. United States had just repositioned its most lethal amphibious warfare asset into the Persian Gulf theater. The USS Tripoli, an 855-foot America-class amphibious assault ship, carried 3,500 sailors and Marines. It carried F-35B Lightning Strike fighters, MV-2B Osprey tiltrooters, MH-60, MH-60S Seahawk helicopters, and the full inventory of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. This was not a show of force. This was the deployment of a ground combat option that the Islamic Republic hoped the United States would never risk. The arrival of an ARG in a combat theater means the president can now put Marines on Iranian soil within 24 hours of a decision. Tehran's military planners had spent 48 hours trying to prevent exactly this moment. They had failed. The strategic context that made March 27th the war's true inflection point required understanding the previous 72 hours. On the evening of March 24th, Iran fired a salvo that nobody at CENTCOM Forward Command had expected in that volume. 6 Fateh-110 ballistic missiles, paired with 29 Shat-136 loitering munitions, converged on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. This was the primary forward staging hub for U.S. Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles executing deep strike missions against Iranian missile production facilities. The barrage was not random. Iranian targeting intelligence had identified Prince Sultan as the nerve center of the air campaign's logistics chain. 14 SM-2 and Patriot PAC-3 interceptors were fired. 11 Iranian projectiles were destroyed. 5 missiles and 4 drones penetrated the outer layer. The detonations tore through maintenance hangars, a fuel storage annex, and a relay station. 12 American service members were wounded. The blast wave shattered windows across a 2-mile radius of the base in the operations center. Every console went dark for 11 seconds as the power grid absorbed the shock before backup generators kicked in. It was the most damaging single Iranian strike on a U.S. installation in the entire month of operations. And it had come at the worst possible moment, the night before the USS Tripoli's arrival was to be publicly announced. At the same time, the smoke was still rising from Prince Sultan. A second crisis was igniting 1,600 miles to the northwest. At 0312 hours, on March 28th, Houthi Brigadier General UEA Sari delivered a statement that reordered every diplomatic calculation. The Houthis had just fired a volley of ballistic missiles at southern Israel, their first since Operation Epic Fury began. The target: sensitive military sites near Beersheba, within radar line of sight of Israel's Negev Nuclear Research Center at Damascus. The missiles were detected by Israel's Arrow 3 exoatmospheric interceptor system and the deployed Dod battery. 2 missiles were destroyed in the upper atmosphere. A third was intercepted by an Iron Dome battery over the southern Negev. Air raid sirens wailed. Israeli civilians ran for shelters at 3 in the morning. The Red Sea was now a combat zone again. The USS Boxer ARG, carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, had departed San Diego 72 hours earlier. Its transit route passed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Houthi threat had just put American reinforcements in the crosshairs. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper was managing 5 simultaneous crises, any one of which would consume a peacetime command. First, Prince Sultan Air Base was mission degraded, with primary runway taxiways blocked by debris. F-15E sorties were cut by 34%. Second, the USS Gerald R. Ford, centerpiece of the strike package, was out of the fight after a fire in a laundry facility. Authorized emergency port access in Split, Croatia. Its departure stripped the theater of its primary fixed-wing strike capability. Third, the Houthi re-entry created a standing anti-ship missile threat across 900 nautical miles of the Red Sea corridor. Fourth, Iran had rejected the ceasefire framework, demanding recognized sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, a demand the United States could not accept without conceding control of the world's most important energy choke point. Fifth, Trump had extended the Strait of Hormuz reopening ultimatum to April 6th. 8 days. 8 days before the most consequential military order of the 21st century would either be issued or retransferred. Into this five-alarm crisis, the USS Tripoli sailed. The manner of its operational integration into the epic Fury order of battle was the most significant tactical development of the entire campaign. The Tripoli's F-35B Lightning II complement was immediately brought under CENTCOM's air tasking order on arrival. The F-35B's short takeoff and vertical landing capability made it uniquely suited to operations. From the Tripoli's aviation-optimized deck, the deck was designed without a well deck specifically to maximize aviation fuel capacity and hangar space for sustained high-intensity air combat. By 1400 hours on March 27th, Tripoli's F-35Bs were flying combat air patrol missions over the Persian Gulf entry corridor. By 1800 hours, they were executing strike coordination and reconnaissance missions over the Strait of Hormuz. They were feeding real-time targeting data to the USS Abraham Lincoln's strike packages. The Tripoli had gone from transit to combat in under 8 hours. It did so while simultaneously disembarking the 31st MEU's ground combat element into pre-positioned landing craft, a visible signal that the United States now had a credible amphibious assault option within striking distance of Iranian coastal objectives. The maritime picture that Tripoli entered was already staggering in its scale. CENTC or M. March 28th, operational update contained numbers that redefined the scope of what American sea power had accomplished in a single month. Since February 28th, U.S. and allied naval forces had struck more than 11,000 targets inside Iran. Over 11,000 combat flights had been conducted, more sorties in 30 days than in the first 30 days of Operation Enduring Freedom. In the maritime domain alone, more than 150 Iranian naval vessels had been damaged or destroyed. This included surface combatants, fast attack craft, submarine support infrastructure, and the bulk of the IRGC's coastal defense missile launcher network. Iran's navy had been rendered, in the words of CJC's General Dan Kane, operationally ineffective. The machines still existed. The crews to operate them, in many cases, had deserted. Iranian missile crews, according to Israeli military intelligence reporting, were refusing to man their launchers. The fear generated by precision strike had accomplished what 6,000 kinetic engagements could not fully finish. It had broken the will of the system's operators. But the Strait of Hormuz remained closed. Not because Iran could enforce the closure with naval power. It no longer could. The closure persisted because the physical infrastructure of intimidation, the threat of mining, the threat of drone swarms, the threat of coastal missile systems that even degraded could still reach a commercial tanker at 30 knots, was enough to keep insurance underwriters from issuing policies for straight transit. Lloyd's of London war risk surcharges had reached 7.5% of cargo value per voyage, a number that made commercial transit economically suicidal. Brent crude held above $130 per barrel, and with the Houthis re-entering the conflict, the alternate route through Bab el-Mandeb was also under threat. The United States was running out of time. Trump's April 6 deadline was not political theater. It was a countdown to a kinetic operation to physically reopen the strait, or accept a framework that gave Iran something it could call victory. The most closely watched development of late March was the quiet departure from Incirlik Air Base of a convoy of MC-13 OJ Commando 2 aircraft, at least 15 of them, fitted with a new Silent Night low-altitude terrain-following radar system, designed for missions into denied airspace. Their destination was not disclosed. Their payload was not disclosed. But their presence communicated one message with surgical precision. The United States was preparing for a direct action mission that went beyond the strike envelope of carrier aviation, whether it was a Karg Island seizure, a decapitation strike, or a covert force insertion. The deployment meant JSOC had been given a tasking, and JSOC does not fly MC-13OJs to the Middle East in bulk for training exercises. They fly them when a 4-star has signed a mission order. By the morning of March 29th, 2026, the Tripoli was on station. The Ford was in Croatia. The Boxer was 25 days out. Iran had 8 days to reopen the strait. The Houthis had re-entered the war, and somewhere over the Gulf, 15 blacked-out MC-13OJs were flying. What you have just absorbed is not speculation. Every asset and operational detail in this video is sourced from CENTCOM releases and USNI News. Fleet tracking, sourced from the Aviationist, Military Times, Stars and Stripes, and CBS News reporting from March 22nd through March 28th, 2026. Operation Epic Fury is now 1 month old. 13 Americans have been killed in action. Nearly 300 have been wounded. 11,000 targets have been struck. 150 Iranian vessels have been destroyed. And the Strait of Hormuz, through which 21 million barrels of oil flow every day, has been closed for 30 days. The arrival of the USS Tripoli does not end this war. It ends the phase in which Iran could believe that American restraint was permanent. 3,500 Marines sitting 50 nautical miles off your coastline, with F-35Bs on deck and landing craft in the water. This is not a diplomatic note. It is a physical ultimatum written in steel and aviation fuel. The question is not whether the United States has the capability to end this. It does. The question is whether the price of ending it is one that Washington is prepared to pay before April 6th. Comment 1. If you believe the USS Tripoli's arrival forces Iran to negotiate. Comment TWO. If you believe this is the beginning of a ground operation no one in Washington is admitting to yet. Stay sharp. Stay informed. Because the next 8 days will decide whether this is the war that never started, or the one that couldn't be stopped.